everybody, and you're very welcome to the latest episode of the South Tip Arts Podcast, our first one of 2021. And as we're all back in lockdown again, we have decided to revive our cup of culture, which we started up during the first lockdown. My guest today is part of the programme for our spring series, Connect, Create, Inspire, which we have come up with in conjunction with a number of arts and health practitioners from all over the place to bring you a month's worth of diverse creative activities for you to enjoy online, and all completely free. The project is supported by Healthy Ireland and Healthy Tipperary, and also by Tipperary Arts Office, and we would really like to thank them for their support with this project. The Healthy Ireland project is funded by the Government of Ireland and is aimed at helping us all keep well, and you can use that hashtag in connection with any of our events throughout the month. It's designed to keep you active, to help you mind your mental health, re-engage with your creativity, keep connected and in contact with people, and to help support each other and keep well through these challenging times. Our programme of events centres on the importance of creativity to our health and well-being, and we really hope that people will enjoy what we've put together for them. All the events are free, as I've just mentioned, and are available for booking on Eventbrite. So if you go to the Eventbrite website, you can search South Tipperary Arts Centre as a venue, and there you should see all of the events that we've got lined up in the coming weeks. You can download the programme from our website, which is www.southtip.artcentre.ie, or it's also posted on all our social media channels on Instagram, on Twitter and on Facebook. So you can check it out there. So my guest today is one of the practitioners who will be running some workshops during the month. Her name is Maria Coleman. Her company is called Comhcheol Arts and Wellness. You can visit her website at comhcheol.ie. That's COMHCHEOL. And Maria has a varied educational and vocational background in fine art, music, multimedia, research, teaching, community development and writing. She believes in the healing benefits of mind-body practices like Qigong and Yoga, and her passion for mental health and positive birth advocacy led her to train as a yoga teacher and a sound healing practitioner. Maria's keenest interests lie in the space where yoga, art, neuroscience, psychology, music, play, sound healing and well-being all meet. She lives in Donegal with her family, where she runs Comhcheol Arts and Wellness and Donegal Yoga Retreats. Since lockdown, she's developed a blog and an online learning platform. As well as all these things, Maria is a really old friend of mine, and I was absolutely delighted to catch up with her for a chat on St. Bridget's Day.
You know what? One thing about the pandemic is that we would not be able to probably do this or make this happen if it was in real times, because it just wouldn't be feasible really in any way, shape or form. So it's brilliant to be able to connect with you way up there in Donegal, which has always seemed like a long ways away, but really now seems like it could be the other side of the world. Then again, I know it could be the other side of the world because everybody seems so far away from each other. I was seeing you on the first fortnight and the talk that you had about actually creativity and then the imposter syndrome thing, which was, I've just been reading back over your blog post, one of your last blog posts, and it's very funny for starters because instant recognition of all those feelings just kind of coming up to the surface. I think everybody, every like artist, or I even say it hesitantly, or, you know, arts practitioner, like we call ourselves all kinds of things, but I think everybody feels it. Do you think half of the reason for that is because it's so undervalued as a kind of a tool in the toolkit, creativity in general, and like expressing, you know, your own artistic expression, whatever that might be, call it good, bad or indifferent?
Yeah, I came across something in my notebook the other day. It was a little poem that I saw going up on my newsfeed. Oh, it could be 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Actually, it probably had to have been since lockdown. And it was a little poem. I'm an artist, it said. Mm. And I don't mind being undervalued. I don't mind that, you know, when you go to a fancy restaurant, you're not looking for water. but when when you start choking on the food, you'll need the water then. I don't mind that, that I'm like a mother that, nobody really realizes that the mother is there, or they just take her for granted. But when you fall and you hurt yourself, you're the first that you go for. And, as an artist, I know that when things are broken, you'll be coming to me for help. And that's okay. I'm fine that you ignore me the rest of the time.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just a poem. I'm paraphrasing it. It's a funny one, Emer, and I think a lot of the imposter syndrome that I'm working through. You were in college with me, and you know what the atmosphere was like in art college. I mean, it was awful, wasn't it?
It was terrible. Yeah.
It was survival of the fittest. It was survival of the. I don't know. It really wasn't nice. And I think in some ways college was probably
there. Actually, a lot has changed, because I think in general, even going back to college myself in 2013, maybe, or 12, can't remember, seems like forever ago, I found that the level of social care and like concern for the students' well-being, like I was blown away by the way everybody wanted to help you to settle in, and like I just found it a million miles away from what we had experienced in Limerick. So I think it is fair to say, or just to acknowledge, that it's definitely changing in general. On a third level, they're very cognizant of the pressures of student life and just being that age in general. And there's a lot of tools out there to try and help you keep yourself well and not fall through the cracks. And
great to hear. Delighted to hear that.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Now, I will say, like, obviously it was 96 that I started, 99 I finished. I mean, that's a long time ago.
Long time ago.
It is.
We forget. And it feels like yesterday.
Yeah. But another part of that was maybe that whole system was preparing us for what was coming ahead of us, in terms of it is very difficult to eke out a living as an artist. Absolutely. And a lot of my problem is that I left my path, even though I'd worked very hard on that path, in order to start earning money. I mean, I was doing a PhD in a fine art school and realised that I had no PRSI contributions to speak of, and I was in my 30s.
Yeah.
So, very hurriedly then I had to start looking for work. But sure, I ended up with huge amount of skills, on minimum wage for those skills, because I was in West Donegal, and you know how it works.
Yeah. It's very difficult. Like outside of the major centres, I think that everybody suffers from that problem as well. Completely agree with you. But then you kind of forget as well, though, that I think that part of us places ourselves back at that spot where we were in Limerick in 1996 or 7 or whatever. And a part of you kind of hangs on to that and thinks that, but if you actually stop for a minute and go, oh my God, that was 20 something years ago. Look what I've done in the meanwhile, while it mightn't all be, we mightn't be rolling in dosh. There's a lot has changed. We all need to give ourselves a little kind of a pat on the back, I think.
I think you're right, Emer. Yeah. I think you're right. And it is important to look back and give yourself that pat on the back, to give yourself that dopamine hit and reward yourself for something you've done, and say to yourself, I'm a bit proud of that.
That we don't do that we never do that, I think is it because you're constantly either trying to find the next piece of work, trying to get the next gig or whatever, that you kind of forget to stop and turn around and go, okay, like I've actually come a long way here.
And then the creative process as well. Yeah. You're kind of conditioned, since, you're conditioned to believe that there's blood, sweat and toil involved. You're, conditioned to think that, unless you've, what your man Hemingway used to say, writing is easy, I just sit down at the keyboard and bleed, and then, the whole myth of the suffering artist, poor Van Gogh and his madness and his, being outside of the world. There is, that stuff has dripped down to us, and we kind of believe it.
Yeah.
So you have to do a lot of work on yourself to keep going back to that well of creativity that's playful and that's not full of guilt and not full of expectations. And, allow yourself to be curious, about what might come up from your psyche, instead of being, forcing it out of this place of fear,
Yeah.
And it is tough to be an artist, because you are mining your own psyche, and that's not easy work.
It's absolutely not easy work. No.
Yeah.
You spent a good many years since the art college experience exploring all these different avenues of creativity and ways to kind of be more embodied and be more at peace with yourself and everything. So the major thing that seems to have stuck with you was the yoga. So it means that when you found that, you just didn't look back.
Yeah, totally, Emer. Yeah, I mean, I had, when I started at college, I was just after a road traffic accident and I was limping and had all that kind of trauma. But sure, I was letting on, I didn't have it.
Yeah.
And then just as I finished art college, I had another kind of a trauma because I got this Bell's palsy and my face paralyzed, and I had this reaction to a drug that was just horrific, and holy mother of God. So what brought me out of those two traumas was yoga. And I travelled to Australia directly after finishing in Limerick. And I went to my first yoga class in Bondi. And oh my God, what a place to wander into a yoga class. I mean, all the beautiful people were there. Oh my God. And they were all bendy and they were all, holding their dancer poses perfectly. And myself and my friend, she's from Tipperary as well, Alma, we went in and, we were trying to balance or something and we were falling over, and it was like a comedy sketch. So that was my one and only yoga class that time. And then we travelled around Australia. But even though I had, like I say, it was a comedy sketch, the first one, and everything about it would kick you back out the door, I still got out of it tree pose. You know, the one where you've got one leg up and you're So I remember as we travelled around Australia, we stayed on the coast and we camped, and we were complete hippies. As they'd say in Australia, we were feral. Bare feet and playing guitars and banging drums. And then we'd stop on a beach and I'd go down to the beach and I'd stay there until I maintained a good tree pose. And I kept doing it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what was driving me to do it. And then years after, once, I trained as a yoga teacher and started looking into neuroscience. It turns out that you store trauma in the stem of your brain, right, into your hind brain, into your primary part of your brain. Yeah. When you're doing tree pose, you're engaging that part of your brain. And if at the same time, so that's bottom up, and if at the same time you're telling yourself positive things, that's top down.
Okay.
And I was telling myself positive things, because at that stage my face was still falling and, things were terrible. I was 23 and I looked like, Princess Fiona out of Shrek, except she had a symmetrical face. But I was telling myself positive things while I was engaging with the part of my mind that was storing the recent trauma. And little did I know it, I was actually mining out that trauma already. It was brilliant. So that's why it felt so good and so real and so healing that I remembered that. And it did take me a while to actually make the commitment to myself that, to take yoga further in my life. It was always kind of a secret closet thing I was doing. People wouldn't have known I was doing it, but I was doing it. And then randomly, I saw an advertisement for yoga teacher training in Killybegs. So that's an hour down the road. Okay. Obviously, I'm very rural here. So when I saw yoga teacher training down the road, an hour down the road, I was like, I am doing that. And it's one of the best things I've done.
And you actually pre-COVID had a really gorgeous kind of a business model going on for your business, whereby you would take people up to Donegal and do retreats with them and go hike in the mountain, and it's such a fabulous model for a lot of people would take inspiration from, living with
Donegal yoga retreats. It's still there, hoping for its
I'm sure it'll come back again, and you'll actually have people flocking to you by the time everything opens up.
That'd be lovely. The last one we had was in February last year, and there was Storm Dennis. Do you remember Storm Dennis?
Yeah.
So it was literally, when you look back, it was just before the lockdown.
Yeah.
And for the first time in that retreat, I very consciously put loads of art into it. Yeah. So I had a journaling workshop, I had a drawing workshop. The women, as soon as they come in the door, doing body percussion. God love them. They didn't. I didn't really warn them, but I intentionally did it as a way to kind of break down the barriers. And you know what? It was a magical magical weekend. Yeah.
We all need a little bit of that in our life, just somebody to push us that tiny bit beyond. And you always feel better afterwards, don't you?
You do.
So what you're going to be doing for us over the coming month is a series of yoga drawing jams. So do you want to explain that to people, just to give them a sense of what it's about?
Yeah, I suppose initially it was always conceived of as a live idea, with real people in a real space. And I've started doing a little bit of what's called yin yoga. And in yin yoga, you stay in your pose for a considerable amount of time. So it's not like, the vinyasa yoga where you're moving with your breath and you're flowing from one thing into the other. So what you're doing is you're finding a pose, you're finding comfort in it, and you're staying there. And it always struck me that those poses and the kind of angularity that's there with the way the knees stuck out one way and that they'd be fantastic to draw. So that's where the nub of the idea came from. And then when it couldn't be delivered live, I went down then to the place where it was supposed to happen, to the gallery in Gweedore, and filmed twice, where first of all I was instructing some yoga poses, and then I was not so much instructing the drawing but trying to do the drawing. And that's the yoga drawing jam. So I'm working that for you guys into two different pieces, because there's things I would change about my first one. So I'm enriching it a little bit and leaving it so it's only 40 minutes long, because I think the other one was a little bit too long. Mm-hmm. So that's the yoga drawing jam. Then I'm going to do a mandala-based mindfulness one. And to be truthful, warn everybody, there will be some movement involved. There'll always be some movement involved.
You shouldn't have warned them, actually.
But it's good, though. It's playful music, because I have huge interest in this neuroplasticity. And as you said, someone there to poke people and get them out of their comfort zone. So neuroplasticity and physical movement go hand in hand. So, I know that mindfulness is very, everybody's talking about mindfulness, And I mindfulness it's just like meditation. And meditation would be the yogic tradition, and mindfulness would be the Buddhist tradition. And they're both beautiful traditions. Yeah. But I'm coming from the yoga background, and I'm also just coming from, what my gut tells me. Yeah. And my gut tells me that you can't, if you have a problem with a busy mind, you can't sit down and start being quiet and telling your busy mind to be quiet. Yeah. Because you're only dealing, it's kind of meeting fire with fire. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas
the sound of the yin yoga and the beauty of kind of holding that pose is that your mind has to focus on holding your position to some extent, so that it kind of takes away it can't do the busyness, because it's trying to focus on holding this pose or whatever. So that sounds really like very effective.
You'll probably really enjoy it. It's lovely practice. It's lovely practice. But that's the whole thing. I think you need to, instead of fighting fire with fire, you need to go fire with water. And if you've got a busy mind, meet that busy mind with some busy movements, and then slow those movements down, and then we can start talking about slowing down the mind. That's my take on it.
It kind of mindfulness, but it's almost like you want to get a bit of mindlessness in a way, because like mindfulness,
that's it. Yeah,
different. Well, I suppose to different people have different varying degrees of busy minds. I think you and I probably have the same kind of almost level of busy mind syndrome, and I know lots of people like that. I think we attract each other. But that's all feeding into the kind of imposter syndrome thing as well, because you're constantly analysing yourself and did I do that right, or what?
The critic is very busy.
Yeah. And that's the thing to silence, isn't it? The other thing is you're going to do a little bit of talking about creativity and.
Yeah, the last one is habit hacking and journaling. So I've been journaling forever. So occasionally I go through a run where I do it every morning. And when I can keep that up, so that's the practice that, I think her name is Julia Cameron, she's got that book called The Artist's Way.
Yes.
And so she has this thing called the morning pages, and that's probably where I got that kind of morning ritual. Now, I'm not doing it at the moment, but any time that I have done it, it has paid me back in spades. Now, even if you don't do it in the morning and you just do it at some stage, it still pays you back in spades. And now I'm finding myself because I'm doing tiny bits. I'm after doing a certificate in mental health.
Yeah.
And then prior to that, I was facilitating a stress control class.
Right.
So you don't have to be qualified to do it. It's one of these, it's called a large scale psychosocial intervention or whatever.
Okay.
So the idea is that you're presenting to the masses loads of psychology ideas that are very accessible. Yeah. And it's very intentional that the person presenting them isn't an expert.
Yeah.
So that gave me a segue back. That kind of psychology path gave me a segue back into looking at the neuroscience. So that's going to come into this journaling workshop, actually. So there is this idea of neuroplasticity. Mm-hmm. What do you do to develop neuroplasticity? So there's a really clever guy, love his work, called Dan Siegel. Mm-hmm. He's a fantastic book written about the teenage brain. Everybody out there who's got one, go and read the book.
Okay, I'm writing that one down.
Yeah. So he's got this, he's explaining what's going on, in teenage years. So basically your brain is, when you're a child, will visualize it like a tree. It's growing this big, beautiful tree of knowledge, and there's, a branch over here that's for playing in the sand. And there's a branch over here about music. And there's, and then when you become a teenager, your brain starts pruning itself. And it literally very, very brutally gets the pruning thing out and just cuts away. I haven't played the sand age, don't need it. Haven't done music in ages, don't need it.
Really? Oh my God.
Really? Yes. And what it does is it just prunes away what's not used anymore. It's kind of like, in that film Inside Out?
Yes.
Where all the dead memories go.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, we don't need to know about Bing Bong anymore. So, boo, just throw it in the... And then, which is, it's a scary thing.
Yeah.
But also then the brain starts remodeling itself and making itself more efficient and faster. And actually, he reckons that that's how humans have evolved to be as adaptable as we are because of the teenage brain. So, but it starts doing that from the back up. So from that brainstem I mentioned already, up. Wow. So that's why emotions are so huge for a teenager, because they have actually made their connections in the emotional part of their brain razor sharp. Like they're hyper aware of all that. And then the teenage brain doesn't become able to, your prefrontal cortex isn't optimized till your early 20s. Okay. So that's the part here that makes good decisions and has forethought. And
yes, yeah.
So looking at stuff like that then for the journaling workshop, I'm also looking at habits. Yeah. And even though as adults, our brains aren't as plastic anymore, we still have the ability to change a habit. Yeah. And to know the kind of mechanics of that and how to do it and, consciously do it. So that's going to come into that one as well. Yeah.
They say that you have to do something like at least 50 times, isn't it? Or something like that before it becomes a habit. I always think of like toddlers, they say when you've got a fussy toddler and you're trying to get them to eat and they just won't eat, and you have to offer the food like 20, 30, 40 times before they might accept it once. So you do have to invest a little bit in any of this kind of work, don't you?
Yeah, you do. You do. And
I think just making, this opportunity might be for a good opportunity for an awful lot of people to just, it's a new year and maybe we haven't all found our New Year's resolution or that pressure that's there to do something new or like whatever it is. I think this might be a really good opportunity for people to choose to look after themselves better and just make that decision and say, okay, I'm committing to this. I'm going to do it. It's a start.
Yeah.
Even if it's just 1 hour out of all of them, it will make a difference.
Totally, Emer, totally. And self-care, that's becoming a bit of a mantra for me. And believe me, believe me, my house is like the plumber's house with the leaky pipes. Believe me, I preach about this because I need it myself, self-care. But speaking about we're speaking today, and I know it's recorded, but it is in bulk today. It's Bridget's Day today. So this is our real, beginning of Yeah. So this is the real beginning, today. So we can leave all the guilt of January behind us and all those slept in mornings and all that stuff. Let it go.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, there's more light coming. There's the days are going to get longer. Everybody's just going to, I think, do you know what? The rising tide lifts all the boats. And
it does.
Like, if we can do that in any small way with this month full of stuff, then I think we'll be doing a good job.
Yeah, fair play. I think it's brilliant. I'm looking forward to seeing your other contributors as well and getting involved.
So as well, we've Alan Wells, who's former staff member at the Art Centre, actually, and another Limerick Art College survivor.
Yeah, he has. He did his tour duty.
Yeah. Who's an excellent artist and a powerful group facilitator for meditations and stuff. So Alan's going to do 2 weeks of morning meditations, Monday to Friday. And that will be very much on a kind of a drop-in basis or a follow-along basis. So it'll be open to whoever wants to join. And then we've got Annie Hogg, who's from Clonmel and graduated from Crawford a good number of years ago now. And her company is called the Wild Hedge Inc. Company.
Oh, wow.
Right. Sorry if I didn't, Annie. But she's done some workshops for us in the past and fantastic. Like, really, she makes all her own inks from foraging hedgerows and kind of brings people through that process. It's some like strange sort of alchemy to actually watch it happen.
Wow.
It's brilliant. And she's got a lovely way of interacting with her crowd as well. So that'll be just a lovely, enriching thing for anybody to join in on. And you'll also be able to do one of those, maybe, or do all of them if you want. She's going to do some charcoal making and she's going to do some talks about the history of ink and all those processes. So that sounds fascinating. And then we have another arts and health practitioner called Bridget Tehan of Bee House Arts, who we've done a lot of work with in the past as well. And Bridget is facilitating group meetups and chats and just getting creative in a very informal space. And her stuff is very much going to be aimed at rural dwellers and people who might feel a little bit isolated or missing company. And they sort of designed to just be like a meet up by the fire, take your boots off and relax with us for an hour every week. So that's a lovely thing as well.
Yeah, and when you actually, that's creativity by relaxation, by communication, by stealth, isn't it?
And even just that kind of building up the community sort of and trying to reach out to people that mightn't be able to interact with us on a normal basis is just, you know what, for all the bad things with COVID happening and all this, like we mentioned already, like a lot of these events probably wouldn't happen if we're to be realistic about it. And if our doors were open and we had exhibitions on and other things happening, like none of this stuff would have time to happen really because we'd all be too busy. So we have to take the positives, don't we?
Yeah.
As much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just so delighted to see that, you've a whole raft of stuff going on that's aimed at mental health, really underneath it all, aimed at well-being. And, everybody is very concerned about the virus, etc., etc. But, there is another, that was an earthquake. And now the tsunami is coming of, the result of all the isolation and all the fear. And, we're humans and that, it's mental health is, we have to look after it. We can't presume that, it's just going to hold firm because it should.
Because, that's cool.
And like I say, it's wonderful to see the arts now given their proper place. They can be very healing, and they're not just for the genius. And I think just to go back to where we started with the whole imposter syndrome and that, this whole idea that, to be creative, you have to be some kind of genius, that steals away magic from everybody if you believe it, because it puts you in the place of, well, if I'm going to engage with art, I have to consume it, I have to receive it, because clearly I wouldn't be good enough to make it. And when you take away that creativity and that playful spirit, that little child inside yourself that just wants to have a bit of fun, and you say, no, be quiet, you're not good enough. You're not
Not doing yourself any favors. Well, Maria, thanks so much for helping to inspire us. Cheers to you for joining me today.
And cheers to you, my friend, because you know what? It's great to see you.
You too.
All those miles away.
You won't see this on the final cut, but yeah, it's been great to actually catch up with you again. Really, really good. And look, we look forward to what's coming up.
Yeah. Thanks, Emer.
Thanks again to Maria for her time in chatting to me about Connect, Create and Inspire and her part in it. Don't forget you can download the programme from our website, that's www.souththipartcentre.ie, or you can see it via our social media. If you'd like to get in touch with the podcast, the email address is souththipartspodcast@gmail.com. That's souththipartspodcast@gmail.com, and we'd love to hear from you. Talk to you all again next time.